I get questions all the time asking about animation and motion design, particularly in the context of social media. So in this video, we're going to speak directly with one of our motion designers that brings our social program to life through animation as we give you a behind-the-scenes look into our complete workflow.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools, the show to help you share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by Brady Shearer.
Recently, we did an episode of Pro Church Tools where we brought in one of the designers who works on our social program here. The social program is one of the main products that we have here, where basically we create social media content for churches. Every single day you get a brand new post. You can head to prochurchtools.com/products if you want to learn more about that. But what we did was we brought in one of the designers to basically explain, okay, what's the workflow behind creating a new design every single day for social? Because social it's unforgiving. And it also doesn't really care what you did yesterday.
Right. And Scott is the guy who brings our ideas, mostly your ideas, to life, takes it from, basically a concept to an actual design, to an actual image.
But one of the foundations of the social program is that we don't simply send out still images in the form of social content, but we actually send out a video every single day. And so Scott is the one that takes the post and creates a Photoshop kind of layered file, but then we send it off to our motion animation team. And so we wanted to bring one of our key motion designers onto this episode of Pro Church Tools. Now, unlike Scott, who is kind of full-time here at Pro Church Tools, our entity, our organization, the motion designer that we're bringing on is actually the co-owner of his own animation company called Hypekick. And we're bringing on Jeff Schultz today, who's the co-owner. Jeff, you there?
I am. Hey, it's good to be with you guys.
Yes, great to have you on the show, Jeff. We get a lot of questions, truly, about motion design, usually in the form of what app did you use to create this?
Right.
And I have to kind of delicately respond in YouTube and be like, it's kind of like asking an architect,
what app did you use to build this?
What app did you use to make this blueprint? It's like, well, it's a little more complicated than that. And the reason that we have Jeff and his entire team at Hypekick doing the motion animation for this is because even though I know a little bit about After Effects, the breadth of my knowledge is, I downloaded a template from videohive.net and I can hack my way through customizing it, which is very different than designing motion from scratch. And Jeff and his team have to do this for a new post every single day of the year, forever.
A lot of work.
So, Jeff, can you kind of maybe... Yeah, exactly. Can you recount I remember getting in touch with you guys for the first time through kind of a mutual friend, but can you kind of recount what it was like to kind of get started with the social program and, what went into that? I mean, I don't know why you said yes to us to begin with at all, frankly.
Well, yeah, I do remember that call, and I remember being really excited learning about what you guys were trying to do with social media and trying to empower the church. And I've been on staff at Elevation Church as well for the last coming up on 11 years next week. So obviously creating content for the church is really near and dear to my heart, something I've poured a lot of my life into. And so kind of hearing where your guys' heart was and the program that you guys were, about to release, I wanted to figure out a way to be a part of it. Not only, from a business standpoint, obviously it's nice to have a project and a great client, but more so from helping other churches, feel empowered to be able to use video and social media, knowing that Elevation put so much energy and resources into it, and not every church has that, that ability. So I wanted to, it's kind of like the answer is yes. Now let's just figure out how to make it work, so.
And I was the reason I was so excited to even jump on a call with you guys to begin with, before we even started talking about the specific details and before I got to know you and the rest of the team better, was we had this mutual connection that was I actually know one of the main motion designers, creatives at Elevation, and they have their own agency. Perhaps they could be helpful. And to me, I remember I was at that church conference in Atlanta, and I was sitting there with a couple of people on our team, and I was thinking this is my dream. Because Elevation was one of the main churches we would look up to and be man, they're really leading the way for so many churches when it comes to social. And how can we make something like that available to every single church that would want it? And I was always maybe we could get a designer that's kind of familiar with that. And then our mutual connection was you could just get the designers from Elevation. And I was yes, that would be ideal. And I remember we jumped on a call the very first time. I distinctly remember it because after we had jumped on the first call, which was in Atlanta in like the lobby of like the Marriott, I was with my wife and daughter at the Niagara Safari.
Nice.
And so I had to take a step away while they were like, on the, what's the, the boat that you get in? You like, one of the paddle boats. Yeah. And I'm like on the call trying to listen over the sounds of, horses and zebras.
Yeah, giraffes or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, I just want to say one more thing to that. Yeah. It's one thing to find a motion designer. It's one thing to find a talented animator. Mm-hmm. It's another to find one that can work at scale and create a brand new post every single day with an accompanying After Effects template that we distribute and made for social.
Yeah.
Because I would say that social is a very unique beast when it comes to motion design and video. When we finally got connected to Hypekick and Jeff, it was a dream because we had already been in talks with a number of designers and they were talented, but there's something unique about social. Yeah. Jeff, what's your perspective on that, kind of the unique challenges of creating video content for social?
Sure. I think, it's one of the things that you have to do, and I know you guys talk about a lot is, how do you stop the scroll? How do you get someone's attention? Because obviously people are just bombarded with content on social media and on just the internet in general. Everywhere you look, there's another ad, another video, another post that is trying to get someone's attention. So, obviously with most people, when you're creating video content and, motion graphics, you're looking at, okay, I might be looking at like, at least a minute long piece or something like that. And so I have a little bit of time to develop some sort of story, and try to communicate a full story arc, or at least tap into it and kind of create that intrigue. But with social media, it really is, it's like, how can you grab someone's attention, and connect with them in 3 seconds, and what's going to be, the trigger that gets them to stop and say, oh, I'm actually going to engage with this. And I was listening, I listened to your last interview with Scott, and one of the things that he had kind of mentioned is, like the connection point, and that when he's thinking through his designs, it really is through how do I get people to engage with the content. And so I think from a video and motion graphics standpoint, it really is adopting that same kind of mentality. You really have to kind of put the audience first and foremost right at the beginning of the post and have something that you feel is going to connect with them on, an intellectual level or an emotional level, or something that makes them feel seen or heard, so that they're like, oh, cool. Like these guys, they asked a question that is something that I'm interested in. So I want to engage on it, because most people want to share, something about themselves on social media. That's kind of the whole point of the platform, right? To be social with one another. And so a lot of that involves allowing people an opportunity to connect and to engage with the content. And obviously you guys do an incredible job setting us up with, great design, great content. And, so we really get to kind of come in on the back end and say, okay, how do we take this message and this question or this content that they've provided to us and really make it pop up front to get someone's attention. So, obviously it's a team effort. We're not sitting here doing the whole thing, from beginning to end. So you guys set us up well.
Well, speaking of that, Jeff, I want to ask you a little bit about your process, because I'm a photographer by trade. I know my hand around Photoshop and Illustrator and Sketch as far as, design goes. But when you get a design, across your desk, as far as what you do, like it might as well be magic to me, because it's hard to understand how you can take something that's still and turn it into life. So I want to ask you 2 questions. First of all, how you approach a still image, a still design, and how you decide, okay, how am I going to animate this? What am I going to animate? And then once you've made those decisions, what tools are you using to actually do that work?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the first part, some of it's kind of one of those intuition things where obviously everyone's got different giftings, right? And so for me, when I see static design, even when I was in college, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design. And so I took a few, just intro design classes and typography classes and all that. And this was before I even had declared motion graphics and, as my major. But I did go there for animation. So, I've kind of always just been intrigued with, things in motion, animation and whatnot. And so whenever I would even be in a design or in a class where I'm just even designing still content, there was something always intuitive about to me about looking at something and be like, man, it'd be cool if like, that those diagonal lines that are in that design, if they were, moving in that direction. It's like I kind of saw stuff that was incorporated, just like moving in my mind, even though it wasn't on paper. So there's obviously a little bit of that to it, which, you can't necessarily teach that. It's something that is a little bit of, I think there's like those gifts that God pours into different people. But, on the very practical side of it, kind of playing off that, you really are looking for elements within the design that, that you can kind of, that are already kind of have some directional aspect to them, so if there are some elements that, have, a diagonal, or if there's some arrows or something, it's like, okay, well, an arrow is pointing to something, it's pointing in a direction. So you're looking for elements that already kind of have a directional nature to them. And that's kind of like the first thing that I, look for when I'm looking at a static design. The second thing that you want to kind of approach is, okay, what's the main message? What's the main hook of the design? And that's the thing that you want to lead with and anchor everything else around and support. So, it's just like visual hierarchy. You kind of have, you have your primary and secondary animation elements. So you want to say, okay, in this design, you guys did like the grill one. Like, what's the one thing? What was the question for the hamburger? Like, what's the one thing you would like leave off your hamburger or something like that? You guys talked about it with Scott. Can't remember the exact question, but it's like, okay, the primary things, right? There's this question and then the visual of the hamburger. So you want to make sure that those two things are the things that you're leading with, and then any other design elements that are there can be secondary, and maybe they come in a little bit later, or they are moving slower and stuff like that. So you're kind of layering the fast stuff, which is the main message, and then some slower elements to kind of support it and keep it alive throughout the duration of the post.
One of the things that I think about with film a lot, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it sounds very similar to what Jeff's saying, is that you want to be telling the same story with your camera as you are with like what the character is saying, or what you're trying to share about a character in that moment. So if we're talking from a narrative standpoint, if there's a frantic moment where your character is like, really worried or concerned, or, having this anxious moment, you don't want your camera to have like be on a slider and be moving like perfectly smoothly because they're in a tough moment. So you're maybe going to go with that handheld look, and the camera's jittery because your frame is telling the exact same story as the character in that moment. And what Jeff's saying, it sounds like it's very similar. It's like there's a key message to this social post, and it's about the hamburger and the toppings that you do not want on that hamburger. And so what are we doing with the motion to tell that same story? Which is great because, this is why Jeff's here and not me. It's like, I would be like, what's the really coolest thing that we can do here? And maybe that doesn't actually have anything to do with the message itself.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point, though. I mean, tone is such an important part of what you want to help support with the animation as well. So you're obviously looking for the elements that you want to kind of make front and center with the animation, but also the way in which they move, right? That's kind of what you were hitting at is such another important aspect of it. And if you have some like if it's like a long scripture post, I know we do some of those, so you're not going to want that stuff necessarily like coming in hot and heavy and like really aggressive if it's like a scripture from Psalms or something like that, so you got to kind of be aware of what's the tone of the message. Is it a fun post? Is it a serious post? Is it a more empathetic post? You're trying to get people to kind of feel something a little deeper, and then using appropriate animation styles to help reinforce that. So
I'll never forget, Jeff, the feeling of when you sent the very first couple of posts to us because we had created the designs for them. And I was apprehensive because I had this idea for a social program that was going to be ideally innovative and affordable. And we were trying to bring all these moving pieces together of me, in my mind, coming up with a social post that, most churches would never consider doing, whether that be a countdown post or a Bible reading post or an elimination post. And then we send that out to our designers and they create these stunning designs. And then we're bringing them into animation. And then we're like, can we also get like the source files, the project files, so we could customize these ourselves? And I'll never forget that feeling. I think it was an elimination post, and it came through, and I like ran around the office and I started showing everyone. I was like, "Look, they did it!
It's alive!
It's a thing. Like, this is actually gonna work."
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was my perspective, which is
Yeah.
everything's rosy. And then the social program did amazing when we shared it with
Yeah.
Pro Church Nation. Like so many churches signed up. It was one of our most, successful products right from the start. But surely there were some challenges, Jeff. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the first couple of weeks or couple of months of working together. We have a pretty ironed out process now that we've done a full year together. But what were those initial stages like, especially for you, if I'm correct, like kind of like in the newer stages of your own agency?
Sure, yeah, and I also want to touch back. I know I kind of skipped over one of Alex's second questions. I can kind of bring it into this one as well, but I know you had asked about what tools we use, and so the primary tool that we use is After Effects, which is an Adobe product, kind of comes with their Creative Cloud subscription. And so, yeah, a lot of people, it's so funny because I think most people's experience, if they even knew what After Effects was in the first place, and if they've even ever opened it, you open it and it's kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? Because it's not really self-explanatory out the gate of like how you even like start a composition. And they've done some better jobs now with the UI when it opens up and it kind of gives you some prompts. But back in the day, it was just like this gray screen. And you're like, what do I do with this? So, I think there is definitely a learning curve, and I think some intimidation, from other people being able to like say, oh, how would I animate these designs? Because After Effects, like I said, it can be intimidating without spending some significant amount of time in it. So when we were first starting off, it was okay. How do we approach these animation projects in a very smart way? And my brain, I do think pretty systematically about even how I approach my creative process. I'm kind of one of the oddballs. I think that I love creating content, and I would consider myself an artist and a designer, but I also really love math and like clean systematic things that are like, okay, there's a lot of structure here. And I think for whatever reason, I've kind of can switch back and forth between those two things. So, when you approached us with this kind of like problem, like how do we solve this? How do we do this? It really was like, okay, in my head, I'm like, everything has a solution to it. So if the problem is we've got 30 days worth of, 30 posts every month that we're going to put out, all of them have to be animated. And, to me, I'm like, okay, cool. That's definitely a challenge. Cause I've done posts at Elevation, where I might spend a whole day, designing and animating like just one post, and it's like, okay, well, we can't like necessarily spend 30 days animating 30 posts because I don't think you want to pay for that. So it's like, okay, we've got a budget. That's a constraint. We've got a certain amount of things. Those are what we have to work through. So it really was just looking at how do we kind of batch process through these elements. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that when I was thinking through that challenge, from when we were getting started, was how do we kind of approach it with kind of like a batch process kind of, workflow. And so, I know we had some kinks in the beginning with, some of the files when they were getting delivered. I think, you guys kind of deliver in a lot of different formats, but we're only animating in a certain number of formats. So it was like, okay, cool. Like when you guys are delivering us a Photoshop document, it's got, 6 or 7 different artboards on it. When we go to try to import that into After Effects, we have like all this extra like stuff that we don't need, and we're kind of stuck sifting through it. And so, one of the simple solutions, like, okay, cool. Like when, just send us, clean up the Photoshop document, just send us the artboards that, that we're actually gonna be animating. So, that was like one hurdle that initially was like slowing us down a lot, but we were able to communicate and work through that. I remember another thing we touched on and you kind of asked me about was, the review process. Like, okay, we have so much content that is, coming to us, and then we kind of do our internal review process after we do like round one. Then we revise it internally. Then we send it to you guys. We get your feedback, make those revisions on the post that you had feedback on, send them back to you. And you're like, man, that's a lot of, file uploading and back and forth. And so, we went and thankfully there's, some great tools out there. One of them being Wipster, which we use. And that has really helped, I think, with our, review and revision process, because we can kind of have one folder for each month. It allows you to update versions within the same folder. So you don't necessarily have to be, duplicating files and taking up all your extra storage space on, Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever. and you guys are allowed, can annotate comments right where the feedback is. And so I think having a tool like that has been crucial in allowing us to go back and forth really, I feel like pretty seamlessly. And it feels like almost real-time feedback. Like if we're sitting in the room with you, being able to get that feedback and make revisions efficiently on our end. So
yeah, Wipster has been huge for that because it's a great tool. You'll upload essentially 30 videos or 31 videos, and then we'll be able to go in and leave comments not only on like the exact portion of the screen that we're trying to comment on. So maybe like there's an arrow and I'm like, oh, I need to make a comment about this specific arrow. It's not doing what it should be. But I can actually make an annotation and make a comment at a certain juncture in that comp.
Oh, cool.
So at like 21 seconds, this should be doing X, but it's doing Y. And I can click right on the screen and then add a comment. And so then when Jeff and his team go in, they'll say, oh, they'll see Brady made a comment at 21 seconds and it'll show at this exact part of the screen, which is crucial because we're talking about 31 different videos that are anywhere between 15 and 60 seconds long. And so that's, 24 frames in a second, but even if we just don't even consider that, 60 seconds times 30 is, like what, 18,000 seconds? I don't know. There's a lot of seconds. There's a lot of frames in those seconds. And so having a tool like Wipster has been essential for revisions and for collaboration. And we've gotten to the point now where, at least for my part, like the revisions are, I think, like pretty reasonable, like maybe even minimal. It's not, we rarely have a comp that like completely misses the mark or, a series of comps that are basically like, reworking from scratch. So that seems pretty rare.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with, anyone, when you're working with someone for a long enough amount of time, you get to like, A, understand some of what their preferences are, B, understand, you kind of compile feedback, right? So in the beginning, I know we had a lot more, posts would have feedback on it, but you kind of understand like, okay, cool. I understand what the goals are for our animation, and I think sometimes as any kind of creative, right? Like you want to like pour your heart and soul into something. And I know you guys talked about this with Scott in the last episode as well, but like, it's not like with social, it kind of comes and goes so quick that this isn't necessarily the right platform to create your Mona Lisa, right? Like this is a place where it's like, okay, cool. There's some function that this post has to perform, honestly. And if you understand what that is, and you make sure that I don't want to say like, not phoning it in, but you're understanding like the context and like the role, I guess, that animation or design is going to play in this. I think that really helps. It helped us as we were going along understand, okay, cool, like this is, or maybe there's even certain posts like, hey, this is more complicated and we really, this one's going to take a bit more time to get done. But we know some of these other ones over here are pretty similar to posts that we've done the last few months. And so we kind of know, what direction to take those without having to, honestly, I think about it too hard because of the repetition and because of that. So, one thing we really try to embrace at Elevation and at Hypekick is understanding our clients. It's, we're providing a service for someone else. And so even if you think about it from a social media standpoint, right, you're providing content for the audience. You're not providing the content for yourself necessarily. You're not trying to impress yourself or maybe try to impress another creative crowd. You're trying to communicate and engage with the people that are at your church or, that are following your channel. And so I think it's really important to make sure you're keeping your audience in mind when you're creating content or animating content, and making sure that it's at a level that is going to resonate with them. So
I think like another really unique element of creating videos for social is the fact that we need to recognize the vast majority of people that engage with this video are not going to hear any of the sound. And I know that with our posts, we include like a backing audio track with every single post that we send out. But Jeff, you guys must be considering this at Elevation as well. I mean, you use a ton of social content that's, Stephen Furtick preaching, and the words that he's sharing, they need to be transcribed and like injected directly into that video, because otherwise just people aren't gonna hear it at all, which is of course another unique disadvantage / advantage of the social medium.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you pretty much said it spot on. Making sure that things are, legible and capture people's attentions, with the words that are being said are so important because, audio, while, people might click on it and, and turn the audio on to kind of get the full experience. Most often than not, they're on mute, the videos are on mute. So, making sure that the message, and again, the animation of the text is something that, if it is a longer piece of, text that we're putting on screen, like don't animate it all on right in like the first second and a half, because then it's going to feel static for a long time. Like do a slower animation, like do something that's going to reveal it over time. So you're kind of keep, leading the viewer's eyes throughout the post. If it's one of those questions, if it's like an elimination question where it's like, hey man, this is something where like, it's not going to take people a whole lot of time to process what the post is. It's like, yeah, be super aggressive, get their attention, get everything on frame as fast as possible. So they have a little time to think, and then, maybe comment below. And so you're not taking up too much of their time. Like you don't need to reveal that text over 30 seconds, it's just like a quick question you want to kind of punch out there really fast and get people's attention. So again, it's just having an understanding of what the content is. Obviously, legibility is coming from you guys from a design standpoint. You're very aware of, what the message is and that people are going to have their sound off. So we just do the best we can to support that with animation that kind of keeps the post alive and engaging for the viewer. So,
Jeff, this has been so helpful so far. And what a big part of what we do here at Pro Church Tools is providing resources for churches to do a lot of this stuff themselves. And so for the folks who are listening who are whether on staff or maybe just volunteering at church who maybe want to approach motion design for themselves, where would you suggest, their point of entry should be? Like maybe they are working at a church and can't go to school like you did. How could somebody get started with motion design today?
Sure. There are two really excellent resources that I recommend if people are really serious about wanting to, learn motion design. One of them is MoGraph Mentor, which a friend of mine had started, years ago. And so it's been really, really cool to watch. It basically his kind of like online school for motion design and animation grow. And the other one is called School of Motion. And the two of those resources, not only do they provide a lot of phenomenal free resources for people to learn and watch, but they provide paid programs as well and again, compared to what you're going to go for at school, like very, very reasonable prices. And, they're all online, and it's kind of a classroom setting. So you still get engagement with other people that are going through the content at the same time. You get real-time feedback, from people who are professionals and, essentially are like your instructor, your teacher. And so I think opportunities like that to be able to, essentially kind of like take night classes, it's like kind of like going to night school. But you can do it from the comfort of your home. And the content that they're providing is really, really like thorough. And it's basically the same kind of content you would get, going to, a 4-year school like I did. And so the great thing is if you are motivated, to do that, it's a great resource. There are a lot of other, great YouTube channels. It's kind of like, the world of YouTube, right? You can really, if you're wanting to, I think that's where if you're looking for really specific stuff, it's like, how do I, animate text on in After Effects? Like Google that, or YouTube that, and you're going to have, a lot of options to kind of pick from if you're just trying to learn something really specific for a certain project that you're working on, and you're not necessarily looking to become a motion designer. I know it's kind of generic, but there are just, I'm always like, man, if I had YouTube when I was, it's like I sound like the old guy, but I'm like, if I had YouTube growing up, it's just crazy how much great stuff is out there. Like, I still do that, like even having all the years of experience, that I have, there's, After Effects is continually releasing, new tools to use or new functions to use, or there's stuff that I haven't really, dove into, completely, and maybe just tap the surface on it. And it's like, man, this project would really benefit if I understood more there. And so, I hop on YouTube and search in stuff just like everybody else in the world, so, that's just a solid resource. But yeah, School of Motion and MoGraph Mentor are ones that I would just highly, highly recommend, people investigating and checking out if they're wanting to, really become more proficient in motion graphics.
Jeff, one of the biggest ideas behind the social program when we started it a year ago, and it remains true today, is this idea that you brought up, stop the scroll. And we use the first 3 seconds of our videos really intentionally, because we recognize we need to have some type of motion or some type of thing that's unusual to get people to stop scrolling, because we can't get them to stop scrolling. We can't share our message with them to begin with. Attention is so important. And I was part of an online conference recently, and what the host did at the end of my session was simply ask, he's like, hey, I know that a lot of you have been following Brady for a while. We're going to give away some $20 Starbucks gift card. The way to enter is to answer this simple question. What's the biggest thing that you've learned from Brady? And I was watching the comments, and I think 9 out of 10 simply said, stop the scroll. And it's a contrarian idea, because it requires you to essentially abandon all of your branding and design standards that you have as a church have worked so hard to create. And so I wanted to ask you this specifically, Jeff, as someone who's on staff at Elevation with a brand that so many of us would look up to. Why do you continue to use designs that are not part of your branding standards on social? Because it seems so contrarian and opposite to what we should be doing.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a great question. And I think branding, right? It's kind of an interesting term in and of itself, because you've kind of, I think, if you've ever heard anyone kind of expand upon, what is branding and ask that question, a lot of people do think it's our logo, it's our colors. It's, the kind of what people will tend to do is just box it into the visual identity portion of what branding is. But when you really dive into what branding is, it's essentially what other people say about you. And that's really your brand becomes what people think and feel about your organization, your company, whatever. And so if one of the things that we want people to feel and think about Elevation Church is, man, those guys are always, on top of the next trend or setting the next trend. They're innovative, they're creative, they're, fill in the blank. Things that we embrace and enjoy about being on staff and being under Pastor Stephen's leadership. That's the type of leader he is. He's always, saying, okay, what's the next thing that we can try and do and experiment with? Then if we're actually creating a lot of content that all feels very much the same and consistent, and you kind of end up feeling, honestly, a little bit more of a corporate brand, which there's great benefit to, I think, some types of businesses a hospital or whatever. You don't really want them to feel like they're experimenting a lot, because when you go to a hospital, you want to be like, this doctor better have done this surgery 10,000 times before me and know exactly what he's doing. The consistency and the professionalism of a hospital is something people actually seek after. Now, in a church culture and in the world that we're in, it's we have a message that maybe a lot of the world doesn't necessarily embrace yet. So part of what we need to do as a church is grab people's attention. Hey, we've got something to say, and you might not fully understand it or agree with it right now, but we at least want to start a conversation with you. And so when you kind of come at it with that mentality, you're able to say, okay, well, what's obviously what's gonna be something that's gonna stand out to people, make them feel a certain way, make them think a certain way about who we are. And again, if we feel old, outdated, corporate, there may be a certain audience that responds to that, even within the church world, but that's not the audience that our church has decided to embrace to try to reach. And I think you guys, kind of would lean more into that as well. Is when you're trying to reach the world with this message, you've got to kind of understand where the world is coming from, and you got to meet them at least halfway, right? I mean, to me, it's if anything, we should be running as far as we can to meet them without compromising any of our standards and saying, okay, hey, I'm right on the fringe, but I want to have a conversation with you, rather than having them come all the way to where we are and say, hey, we're here. If you want it, come and get it. So I think that's one of the big driving factors that allows us to experiment, try new things. We just last night or midnight today, I guess on Friday, we just released a new worship EP through Elevation Worship. And, the branding, I mean, it doesn't look anything like our logo, you look at our corporate logo basically, and the design that's coming out for that album. And it's, like you said, it's not even close to what our brand guidelines would say. But we know that it's fresh. It's good, especially in the music, industry. It's got to be something that's going to kind of, grab people's attention. And that's so much more important. If you get their attention, then they might check out your song. And if they check out your song, then they might, go listen to them, buy a whole album. If they buy a whole album, they might actually discover that, Elevation Worship is part of Elevation Church, which you would not believe how many times we find that out, that people hear the music and don't even realize it's associated with our church, and find our church and find Pastor Stephen's messages through the music. So it's really cool to be able to put content out there and allow people to engage with it, not really knowing where it came from, but having enough interest and choosing to discover where it came from. And I think that's a really important key to what allows our creative teams and our designers to really kind of put things out there that are, a little edgy, a little, off brand, if you will. But it keeps it fun.
And I think if there's any platform that's going to allow for us to experiment, allow for us to make mistakes and push the limits, and frankly, publish posts that don't do well because we tried something new and this time it didn't work, it's social. Because compared to maybe like a long form video or a message or a worship song that you publish on Spotify into the world, social has a lot less permanence, especially on platforms like Snap or Instagram Stories, where they're literally going to expire. And so that's why we want to continue to encourage churches, whether you're using our social program and it'll have this element baked into it, or if you're doing it yourself, keep trying new things. Every single month I sit down in front of that Google sheet to create the social program, knowing it's going to be sent off to Scott and then to Jeff and his team. And I'm thinking, okay, what did we learn last month that is working? And what did we learn last month that maybe is starting to work less? And how can we create kind of new ideas? And that's why I've so appreciated our partnership, Jeff, because I came to you and I didn't just say, hey, we want to create some sermon quote posts. I said, what if there was a countdown timer and we had to experiment with how big should the numbers be? And we published somewhere the 59, 58, 57 countdown. The numbers themselves were smaller. And we realized that the engagement generally dropped versus when the numbers were bigger, because when there's a countdown happening and the numbers are huge, the human spirit is looking at it being what are we counting down to?
I must see.
Exactly. And so, we learned more about that, but we were kind of just creating ideas for social posts that we had never really seen done before. And again, social is such a great platform for that. So I had a conversation yesterday with someone, and they're like, well, I need my logo to be on the post. I'm like, well, first of all, that's obscene because your logo is connected to your profile. You can't post without seeing your logo already. It's redundant to add it. But anyway, even despite that, the nuances and customs of social just mean that you can do really essentially whatever you need to do, short of sin, short of nudity, to grab some attention and to ideally then share the hope of Jesus and message of your church with people. Well, Jeff, we can't say thanks enough for coming on and sharing all of your expertise. If people want to get in touch with you, because unlike Scott, who just get in touch with us, I'm sure there are churches that would be excited to work with you in Hypekick and get some motion design work done for themselves, whether that's long form or short form. So tell us more about Hypekick and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. It's been great to be with you guys. I appreciate, the relationship that we've formed, over the last, I guess it's been, coming up on a year, I guess maybe 10 months or so. It's been so fun. And with Hypekick, our URL is hypekick.com. On Instagram, we're hypekickvid, VID at the end. And really our big goal is to help, it kind of almost stem off of what we're doing with you guys, but help companies or brands or organizations create on-brand, high-quality content at scale. So a lot of the offers that we are working on developing right now and are kind of in beta testing with our things that are all about how do we help people make the most of the resources that we're creating for them, and not necessarily feel like every single time we want to make a video, we're at ground zero, and having to start all over. But we really want to equip brands to be able to say, okay, cool, let's get a library or a toolkit of assets that feel like they're where we're at as a brand right now, and then so let's make that stuff, let's reuse. I know for you, we did the sticker pack with you guys, and so it's okay, cool. Is there we're doing a graphics package? Can we take some stickers and maybe incorporate those into the graphics package, and then maybe add some more pizzazz around them to kind of spice it up and because it's going to be more long living as a graphics package. But those elements that we've already created, it's okay, cool, let's build upon the things that we've done in the past and not necessarily go back and treat every single idea like it's, okay, this one has to be completely different from the last thing. But there are certain times to be able to reuse or kind of not like just do the same thing over and over, because it's not like that's not the goal, but incorporate elements or aspects from the last thing into the next. So, but yeah, the short of it, we believe that, one of our like phrases is visible equals valuable, and video is one of the things that is helping brands and organizations be more visible and be more in front of their audience. The algorithms like video, people like video. More people are on YouTube and watching YouTube content than there's more video consumed than ever before in the history of mankind, and it's not slowing down. And so we really do believe in the power of video, and we really want to help organizations, like I said, figure out a smart, creative way to utilize it and use it consistently, rather than, okay, cool, we dump all our money into this one big video. Hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, well, we're out of budget for the rest of the year. We'll have to try something again in 12 months. Like you can't wait that long.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, that's what we're about. Really helping brands embrace video and use it consistently. That's, at a high level, high standard. So.
Love it. Hypekick.com is the website, at HypekickVid on Instagram, to check out Jeff's work along with his team, of course. And that'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Tools. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. We publish new videos every single week. Alex is so busy, he can't even get out of his chair. So subscribe so you never miss another one.
And like it, please, so you can tell all your friends that you like it. See you.